Welcome to San Academy Pallikaranai, Class 6 Social Science. Happy day, students. We are going to learn our next chapter from history, chapter number 10, New Empires and Kingdoms. Topics to be covered: Samitragupta's Prashasti, genealogies, Harshavardhana and the Harsha Charita, the southern kingdoms. We know about Samitragupta from a long inscription inscribed on the Ashokan pillar at Allahabad. It was composed as a kavya by Harsha, who was a poet and a minister at the court of Samitragupta. This inscription is of a special kind known as Prashasti, a Sanskrit word containing or meaning in praise of. Now let's see what Samitragupta's Prashasti tells us. The poet praised the king in glowing terms as a warrior, as a king who won victories in battles, who was learned and the best of poets. He is also described as equal to the gods. The Prashasti was composed in very long sentences. If you look at map, you will notice an area shaded in green. You will also find a series of red dots along the east coast, and you will find areas marked in purple and blue as well. This map is based on the information provided in the Prashasti. Harsha describes 4 different kinds of rules and rulers, which tells us about Samitragupta's policies towards them. Number 1, the rulers of Aryavarta, the area shaded in green on the map. Here there were 9 rulers who were uprooted and their kingdoms were made a part of Samitragupta's empire. Number 2, the rulers of Dakshinapata. Here there were 12 rulers, some of whose capitals are marked with red dots on the map. They surrendered to Samitragupta after being defeated and he then allowed them to rule again. Number 3, the inner circle of neighboring states including Assam, coastal Bengal, Nepal and a number of Ghana Sanghas in the northwest, marked in purple on the map. They brought tribute, followed his orders and attended his court. Number 4, the rulers of the outlying areas marked in blue on the map, perhaps the descendants of the Kushanas and Shakas, and the ruler of Sri Lanka who submitted to him and offered daughters in marriage. Genealogies. Most Prashastis also mention the ancestors of the ruler. This one mentions Samitragupta's great-grandfather, grandfather, father and mother. His mother, Kumara Devi, belonged to Lichavi Ghana, while his father, Chandragupta, was the first ruler of the Gupta dynasty to adopt the grand title of Maharaj Adiraja, a title that Samitragupta also used. His great-grandfather and grandfather are mentioned simply as Maharajas. It seems as if the family gradually rose to importance. Samitragupta in turn figures in the genealogies, that is the list of ancestors of later rulers of the dynasties, such as his son Chandragupta II. We know about him from inscriptions and coins. He led an expedition to western India where he overcame the last of the Shakas. According to later belief, his court was full of learned people. Harshavardhana and Harsha Charita. While we can learn about the Gupta rulers from their inscriptions and coins, we can find out about some kings from biographies. Harshavardhana, who ruled nearly 1400 years ago, was one such ruler. His court poet, Banabhatta, wrote his biography. The Harsha Charita in Sanskrit, this gives us the genealogy of Harsha and ends with his becoming king. Xianzang also spent a lot of time at Harsha's court and left a detailed account of what he saw. Harsha was not the eldest son of his father, but became king of Tanesar after both his father and elder brother died. His brother-in-law was ruler of Kannauj and he was killed by the ruler of Bengal. Harsha took over the kingdom of Kannauj and then he led an army against the ruler of Bengal. Although he was successful in the east and conquered Magadha and probably Bengal also, he was not as successful elsewhere. He tried to cross the Narmada to march into the Deccan, but was stopped by a ruler belonging to the Chalukya dynasty, Polocation II. The southern kingdoms, the Pallavas. The Pallavas and Chalukyas were the most important ruling dynasties in South India during this period. The kingdom of the Pallavas spread from the region around their capital Kanchipuram to the Kaveri Delta. Chalukyas and Pulakeshin's Prashasti. While that of the Chalukyas was centered around the Raichur Doab between the rivers Krishna and Tungabhadra, Aihole, the capital of Chalukya, was an important trading center. It developed as a religious center with a number of temples. The Pallavas and Chalukyas frequently raided one another's lands, especially attacking the capital cities, which were prosperous towns. The best known Chalukya ruler was Pulakeshin II. We know about him from a prosody composed by his court poet Ravi Kirti. This tells us about his ancestors who are traced back through 4 generations from father to son. Pulakeshin evidently got the kingdom from his uncle according to Ravi Kirti. He led an expeditions along both the west and east coasts. Besides, he checked the advances of Harsha. There is another interesting play of words in the poem. Harsha means happiness. The poet says that after his defeat, Harsha was no longer Harsha. Pulakeshin also attacked the Pallava king who took shelter behind the walls of Kanchipuram. But the Chalukya victory was short lived. Ultimately, both the Pallavas and the Chalukyas gave way to new rulers belonging to the Rashtrakutas and Chola dynasties. Now, how were these kingdoms administered? As in the case of earlier kings, land revenue remained important for these rulers, and the village remained the basic unit of administration. There were some new developments as well. Kings adopted a number of steps to win the support of men who were powerful either economically or socially or because of their political and military strength. For instance, some important administrative posts were now hereditary. This means that sons succeeded fathers to these posts. For example, the poet Harisena was a Mahadanya Nayaka or chief judicial officer like his father. Sometimes one person held many offices. For instance, besides being a Mahadanda Nayaka, Harisena was a Kumar Amatya, meaning an important minister, and a Sandhi Vigrahika, meaning a minister of war and peace. Besides, important men probably had a say in local administration. These included the Nagareshestri or chief banker or merchant of the city, the Sattavaha or leader of the merchant caravans, the Pratama Kulika or chief craftsman, and the head of the Kayastas or scribes. These policies were reasonably effective, but sooner or later some of these powerful men grew strong enough to set up independent kings. A new kind of army. Like earlier rulers, some of these kings maintained a well organized army with elephants, chariots, cavalry, and foot soldiers. Besides, there were military leaders who provided the king with troops whenever he needed them. They were not paid regular salaries. Instead, some of them received grants of land. They collected revenue from the land and used this to maintain soldiers and horses and provide equipment for warfare. These men were known as Samantas. Whenever the ruler was weak, Samantas tried to become independent. Assemblies in Southern Kingdom. The inscriptions in the Pallavas mention a number of local assemblies. These included the Sabha, which was an assembly of Brahmin landowners. This assembly functioned through subcommittees which looked after irrigation, agricultural operations, making roads, local temples, etc. The was a village assembly found in areas where the landowners were not Brahmins, and the Nagaram was an organization of merchants. It is likely that these assemblies were controlled by rich and powerful landowners and merchants. Many of the local assemblies continued to function for centuries. Ordinary people in the kingdom. We can catch an occasional glimpse of the lives of ordinary people from plays and other accounts. Let us look at some of these. Kalidasa is known for his play depicting life in the king's court. An interesting feature about these plays is that the king and the most Brahmins are shown as speaking Sanskrit, while women and men other than the king and the Brahmins use Prakrit. His most famous play, Abhinyana Shakuntalam, is the story of love between king named Dushyanta and young woman named Shakuntala. We find an interesting description of the plight of poor fishermen in this play. The Chinese pilgrim Fazian noticed the plight of those who were treated as untouchables by the high and mighty. They were expected to live on the outskirts of the city. He writes, if such a man enters a town or marketplace, he strikes a piece of wood in order to keep himself separate. People hearing this sound know what it means and avoid touching him or brushing him aside. Thank you.